The execution chamber door swung open with a metallic groan that echoed off concrete walls. Faith Lewis stood frozen in the threshold, her curvy silhouette framed by harsh fluorescent light bleeding in from the corridor behind her. The guards flanking her looked small next to her presence, not her height, but the way she carried herself, shoulders squared despite the trembling in her hands. Kim Jae-ho sat strapped to the metal chair 20 feet away, tattoos visible where his prison shirt sleeves had been rolled up for the IV lines. His eyes found hers immediately, sharp, calculating, softening only at the edges when they traced the familiar curves of her body wrapped in a simple black dress she'd worn to clean his penthouse 1,000 times before. 10 minutes, the warden said, his voice flat with bureaucratic indifference. Faith's heels clicked against the floor as she walked forward, each step measured, her dark skin glowing under the sickly lights. She'd asked herself why 100 times on the drive here. Why would a man hours from death waste his final wish on his maid? But she'd stopped asking out loud. Her past had taught her that men with power always had reasons, and questioning them usually meant pain. Kim watched her approach with an expression she couldn't read. Pride? Regret? Something darker that made her pulse quicken? You came, he said, his Korean accent thick but his English perfect. I wasn't certain you would. Faith stopped 3 feet from the chair, close enough to see the slight bruising on his arms from where they'd struggled to find veins, far enough to maintain the distance that had always existed between boss and employee. You requested me specifically. I figured you had something to say. One question. That was all she'd allow herself. She'd learned long ago that asking why, demanding explanations, showing confusion, those things made you look weak, stupid, easy to manipulate. Kim's lips curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. Always so sharp. That's why I chose you 3 years ago. Do you remember? She remembered. She'd been 23, running from a past in Atlanta that had left scars across her back and deeper ones in her mind. A cleaning agency job in Los Angeles had seemed safe, anonymous. Then she'd been assigned to a Korean businessman's penthouse, and everything had shifted. I remember you paid triple the agency rate and requested I come every day instead of weekly, Faith said. I remember you never touched me, never made me uncomfortable, and always left cash tips that kept me from having to work other jobs. And do you remember the 3 men who followed you home one night? The ones who thought a black woman alone in Koreatown was easy prey? Her jaw tightened. She remembered their hands grabbing at her, their laughter, the way they'd cornered her in an alley behind her apartment building. She remembered the terror, the helplessness, the way her body had frozen just like it had years before when, I remember they disappeared, Faith said quietly. The next day, they were just gone. Kim leaned forward as much as his restraints allowed. I had them killed, slowly, because they touched what was under my protection. The air in the chamber seemed to thicken. A guard shifted uncomfortably near the door. But Faith's heart hammered against her ribs, but she kept her face neutral. She'd suspected, of course. You didn't work for a man like Kim Jae-ho without piecing things together. The late-night visitors who reeked of violence. The conversations in rapid Korean that stopped when she entered rooms. The way even dangerous-looking men treated him with deference that bordered on terror. Why tell me now? She asked. Because in 43 minutes they're going to pump poison into my veins, Kim said, his voice dropping lower. And before that happens, I need you to understand something. I didn't protect you because you were my employee. I protected you because you reminded me of someone I failed to protect long ago. Someone who looked at the world with intelligence burning in her eyes despite everything trying to extinguish it. Faith felt something crack in her chest. This wasn't what she'd expected. Not sentiment, not confession. Kim glanced at the clock on the wall, then back to her. I'm going to tell you 3 things. Listen carefully. Don't react. Don't ask questions. Just listen. She nodded once. First, I am not a businessman. Was, the head of the Baekho faction, one of the 3 largest Korean crime syndicates operating in the United States. The man they're executing isn't a criminal. He's a scapegoat for politicians who needed someone to blame for their own corruption. Faith's stomach dropped, but she kept her expression controlled. Adapt, process, move forward. Second, the people who framed me are the same people who have been trafficking women from Africa to Los Angeles for the past 5 years. Women who look like you. I've been hunting them, dismantling their operations piece by piece. That's why they wanted me dead. Her hands clenched into fists at her sides. Women who looked like her. She thought of the close calls, the narrow escapes, the feeling of being watched that had haunted her before Kim hired her. Third, Kim said, and now his voice carried an edge like broken glass. I'm giving you the key to finish what I started, to burn them all down. But you need to choose, Faith. Walk away and live a quiet life, or take what I'm offering and become the match that lights the fuse. The warden cleared his throat. 5 minutes. Kim's eyes never left hers. In my penthouse. In the safe behind the painting of Jeju Island, there's a USB drive. The code is your birthday. Backwards. On that drive is everything. Financial records, trafficking routes, names of every politician, every cop, every judge in their pocket, and the locations of 4 warehouses rigged to blow with enough evidence inside to bury them all. Faith's mind raced. This was insane. This was dangerous. This was... Why me? The question slipped out before she could stop it, breaking her one-question rule. You have soldiers. People trained for this. Because they are expecting soldiers, Kim said. They're watching my people, waiting for retaliation. But you're a ghost to them. A maid. Invisible. And you're smart enough to use that. He paused and something shifted in his expression, something almost tender. And because you deserve the chance to make them pay. Not just for what they did to those women, but for what they represent. Every man who ever made you feel small, every system that tried to break you, every person who looked at a beautiful black woman and saw something to use instead of someone to respect. Faith's breath caught. He'd seen it. All of it. The weight she carried, the armor she wore, the constant calculation of how to survive in spaces that didn't want her. 2 minutes, the warden said. Kim rattled off an address, a phone number, a name, details tumbling out in a controlled rush. There's money. Clean accounts in the Caymans under a shell corporation, enough to disappear or enough to fund a war. Your choice. There's also a man named Kwon Tae-young, former Special Forces. He owes me his life 3 times over. Call him. He'll help. The doctor approached with the IV bag, and Faith felt time compressing, speeding up in a way that made her dizzy. If you do this, Kim said, his voice urgent now, they will come for you. This isn't a game. This is real, and it's ugly, and it will change you. Faith looked at him, really looked at him. This man who had killed for her without her knowing. This criminal who had somehow been the safest person in her life for 3 years. This stranger who saw her more clearly than anyone ever had. I'm already changed, she said quietly. I've been surviving my whole life. Maybe it's time I did more than survive. Something like pride flashed across Kim's face. Then remember this. They think they've won. Use that. Let them celebrate. Let them feel safe. And when they're fat and happy on their victory, why don't you show them what a mistake looks like? Time's up, the warden said firmly. Guards moved toward Faith, but Kim spoke one last time, his voice carrying across the chamber with absolute clarity. Faith Lewis, thank you for showing me that protection can go both ways. For 3 years, you made a monster's home feel human. For that, I give you the tools to become whatever you need to be. Monster or angel, destroyer or savior. Your choice. As the guards escorted her out, Faith looked back once. Kim Jae-ho sat straight in that chair, defiant even in restraints, watching her with eyes that promised she wasn't alone in this. The door clanged shut behind her. 41 minutes until his execution, and 0 minutes until her vengeance began. Before the story continues, let me say this: if any of these stories comfort you, entertain you, or make you feel understood, please subscribe. It's free, but it means everything to this channel. Now, let's continue. 3 hours after watching Kim Jae-ho die by lethal injection, Faith stood in his penthouse for the first time in 2 weeks. The space felt different now. Not home, but a crime scene waiting to happen. She moved through it quickly, her practical nature overriding the grief trying to claw its way up her throat. The painting of Jeju Island hung exactly where it always had, above the leather sofa where Kim used to sit making phone calls in Korean while she dusted around him. Her fingers found the frame's edge, and she swung it open to reveal a wall, safe with a digital keypad. her birthday backwards. She punched in the numbers, and the safe clicked open. Inside was the USB drive, exactly as he'd said. Beneath it, a Glock 19 with 2 extra magazines, a brick of cash bound with rubber bands, and a burner phone. Faith stared at the gun for a long moment. She'd held one exactly twice in her life, both times at a shooting range where an ex-boyfriend had insisted on teaching her for protection. She'd hit the target more consistently than he had, which had started a fight that ended the relationship. She took everything. In the penthouse's office, she booted up Kim's computer, password also her birthday, she discovered, and plugged in the USB drive. The files that appeared made her stomach turn. Spreadsheets detailing shipping manifests with women listed like cargo. Photographs of politicians shaking hands with men whose faces she recognized from news reports about organized crime. Audio files, video files, bank transfers. But it was the document labeled Kingmakers that made her pulse spike. Names. 12 of them. This wasn't just about human trafficking. This was about a group of power brokers who controlled trafficking, drug distribution, money laundering, and political manipulation across the entire West Coast. Kim had been dismantling their empire piece by piece, and they'd used the federal government to eliminate him legally. Faith scrolled through the details, her analytical mind cataloging everything. 4 warehouses, just as Kim had said, each one loaded with physical evidence and rigged with remote detonators. The trigger codes were included in the file, along with a timeline Kim had been following before his arrest. Phase 1. Expose the financial crimes through media leaks. Phase 2. Trigger warehouse explosions to destroy evidence they could use to cover their tracks, while simultaneously revealing evidence that implicated them. Phase 3. Eliminate key lieutenants to create chaos in their ranks. Phase 4. Disappear while they tore each other apart. Kim had made it to Phase 1 before they'd arrested him on manufactured charges. He'd been in prison for 8 months while they prepared for his execution, and in that time, the Kingmakers had grown bolder. Faith found news articles on the computer about increased trafficking arrests, but none of the women were being helped. They were being deported, silenced, disappeared. Her hands shook as she picked up the burner phone. The only contact listed was labeled Shadow. She pressed call. 3 rings. Then a male voice, smooth and cautious. Who is this? Kim Jae-ho told me to call Kwon Tae-young, Faith said, keeping her voice steady. He said you owed him. Silence stretched for 5 seconds. Then, where are you? His penthouse. Get out, now. They've had surveillance on that building since his arrest. You have maybe 10 minutes before they send someone to check why the alarms were disabled. Faith's eyes widened. I didn't disable any. He did. Before his arrest. Programmed a dead man's switch. The alarms died the moment his heart stopped. It's a signal. They'll know someone's there. Move. She was already grabbing the bag she'd brought, stuffing the cash and gun inside, pocketing the USB drive. Where do I go? Koreatown. Seoul Garden Restaurant. Back booth. 30 minutes. Don't take your car. Don't take a cab. We steal something from the parking garage and ditch it 3 blocks away. You understand? Yes. And Faith? Kwon's voice dropped lower. Whatever you think you're walking into, it's worse. Kim was the kind of monster who kept bigger monsters in check. With him gone, they're going to be vicious. Are you ready for that? Faith thought of the women in those files. She thought of the 3 men who'd grabbed her in that alley, and what might have happened if Kim hadn't intervened. She thought of every time someone had underestimated her because of how she looked, what she was, where she came from. I'm ready to watch them burn, she said. Good. 30 minutes. The line went dead. Faith took one last look at the penthouse, at the space where she'd felt safer than anywhere else in her adult life, and walked out. She didn't run. While running drew attention, she moved with purpose through the halls, took the elevator down to the parking garage, and scanned for options. A black Honda Civic with a cracked bumper sat in a visitor spot. Faith checked for cameras, found a blind spot, and used a trick she'd learned from a cousin back in Atlanta. Slim gym tool from her bag. Kim had taught her to carry one, though she'd never asked why he knew how to use it. And 45 seconds later, she was inside. Hot wiring took another minute. Then she was pulling out of the garage, adrenaline singing through her veins. She ditched the car exactly 3 blocks from Seoul Garden, wiped down the steering wheel and door handles with sanitizer wipes, and walked the rest of the way. The restaurant was busy with late dinner crowd, mostly Korean families and young couples. Faith slipped in through the back entrance near the bathrooms and found the booth Kwan had mentioned. A man sat there already, lean and dangerous looking despite his casual jacket and glasses. He watched her approach with eyes that missed nothing. "You're late by 2 minutes," he said in Korean accented English. "Traffic," Faith replied, sliding into the booth across from him. Kwan Tae-young studied her for a long moment. "Kim described you as intelligent and brave. I don't see brave yet. I see someone running on shock and anger. Maybe that's all I need right now." A small smile touched his lips. "Maybe. Did you bring the drive?" Faith hesitated, then pulled it from her pocket and set it on the table. Kwan didn't touch it. Instead, he slid a tablet across to her, screen already displaying a news feed. "Look at today's headlines." "A third story down," Faith scrolled. Her blood ran cold. "Federal prosecutor announces crackdown on human trafficking. Kim Jae-ho's death sends clear message." Below it, a photo of a white man in his 50s, silver hair, expensive suit. District Attorney Vernon Wright, looking triumphant behind a podium. "He's one of them," Faith said. It wasn't a question. "He's number 3 on Kim's list. The kingmakers don't have a formal hierarchy, but Wright is essential to their legal protection. He's the reason Kim's arrest was so airtight. Manufactured evidence, paid witnesses, sealed records. Wright made Kim untouchable by the law so the law could touch him." Kwan leaned back, his expression grim. "Wright is giving a press conference tomorrow at noon. Federal building downtown. He's going to announce a new task force, more arrests, more deportations. They're using Kim's execution to expand their operations under the guise of fighting crime." Faith felt her anger sharpening into something colder, more focused. What was Kim's plan for Wright? Exposure first, elimination second. Kim had financial records showing Wright's offshore accounts, bribes, payoffs, the whole system. The plan was to leak it to 3 different media outlets simultaneously, then trigger the warehouse explosions to create chaos so Wright couldn't spin the story. "So we do that," Faith said simply. Kwan raised an eyebrow. "You understand what that means? The moment those files go public, every kingmaker will know someone has Kim's evidence. They'll come hunting." "Let them hunt." Faith met his eyes steadily. "I spent my whole life being prey. I'm done with that. Kim gave me the tools." "That you're going to teach me how to use them." For the first time, Kwan smiled, a real one, sharp with approval. "Kim said you'd say something like that. All right, Faith Lewis, let's make his last wish count. But we do this smart, controlled. Kim's plan was good, but we're going to make it better. Because we have something he didn't." "What's that?" "You. They don't know you exist. You're a ghost, and ghosts can walk through walls that stop armies." Kwan pulled out a laptop and opened it, fingers flying across the keyboard. "First, we verify everything on this drive. Then we identify the best media contacts, journalists who can't be bought. Then we set the timer on this bomb and make sure we're far away when it goes off." Faith watched him work, feeling something settle in her chest. Not peace, not comfort, but purpose, direction. Kim had protected her for 3 years. He'd given her the chance for education, safety, a life where she controlled her own path. Now, he'd given her one more thing, the power to ensure other women wouldn't need protection from monsters like the kingmakers. She pulled out her phone and opened the Notes app, starting to organize what she'd learned from the files. Names, connections, vulnerabilities. Her mind worked like it had when she'd put herself through night school while working 3 jobs. Systematic, determined, refusing to accept defeat. "Question," Kwan said, glancing at her. "Why are you really doing this? And don't tell me it's just about Kim or those women. I can see something else burning in you." Faith's hands stilled on her phone. She thought about how to answer. Thought about the truth she'd never spoken aloud. "When I was 19, 3 men in Atlanta decided I was theirs to do with as they pleased," she said quietly. "For 6 months, I was their entertainment, their punching bag, their secret. When I finally got away, I reported it. You know what happened? Nothing. They were connected. Their families had money. I was just a black girl from the wrong part of town with no proof and a history of foster care that made me easy to discredit." She looked up at Quan, and her eyes were dry but burning. I learned then that the system isn't broken. It's working exactly as designed, to protect people with power and grind everyone else into dust. Kim was a criminal, but he was honest about what he was. These kingmakers? They wear suits and quote law and pretend they're righteous while they do worse things than any street thug ever could. So this is revenge, Quan said. No, Faith's voice was steel. Revenge is personal. This is justice. For me, for every woman in those files, for Kim, who tried to fight them the only way he knew how. This is about making sure that for once, just once, the people who think they're untouchable learn what it feels like to burn. Quan studied her for a long moment, then nodded slowly. Kim chose well. Okay, Faith Lewis. Let's teach you how to be a ghost who sets fires. They worked through the night, verifying files, building a media strategy, identifying the journalists most likely to run the story without giving the kingmakers advance warning. By dawn, they had a plan. Phase 1 would launch in 18 hours. They and the city had no idea the storm that was coming. Faith stepped out of the restaurant as the sun rose over Koreatown, the USB drive in her pocket feeling like it weighed 1,000 pounds. She thought of Kim sitting in that execution chamber, defiant to the end. Thought of his words, monster or angel, destroyer or savior, your choice. Maybe, she thought as she walked toward the safe house Quan had arranged, she could be all of them at once. The vengeance chain was about to ignite, and she was the match. The Los Angeles Times newsroom hummed with the controlled chaos of deadline pressure. Reporters hunched over desks, phones pressed to ears, fingers flying across keyboards. No one paid attention to the curvy black woman in business casual who walked in carrying a messenger bag and looking slightly lost. Faith had learned something important in the past 24 hours. Confidence was a costume, and she was good at wearing costumes. For 3 years, she'd been the invisible maid. Now she was playing investigative source, and the role fit surprisingly well. Can I help you? A young Asian woman at the reception desk looked up with practiced politeness. I'm here to see Rachel Donovan, Faith said, using the name Quan had given her. I have information about a story she's investigating. The receptionist's expression shifted slightly. Recognition, maybe interest. Do you have an appointment? No, but tell her it's about District Attorney Vernon Wright and human trafficking prosecutions. She'll want to see me. 5 minutes later, Faith sat in a small conference room across from a woman in her 40s with sharp eyes and ink-stained fingers. Rachel Donovan had a reputation, according to Quan's research, investigative journalist, 3 Pulitzer nominations, known for taking on powerful targets and not backing down even when threatened. You have 60 seconds to convince me not to have security escort you out, Rachel said, her voice clipped but not unkind. I get a dozen people a week claiming they have explosive information. Faith pulled the USB drive from her bag and set it on the table. On this drive are financial records documenting offshore accounts belonging to Vernon Wright totaling $43 million. The deposits correlate directly with dates of trafficking arrests that resulted in deportations rather than rescue operations. There are also audio recordings of Wright coordinating with known organized crime figures and photographic evidence of meetings that he's publicly denied. Rachel's expression didn't change, but her hand moved toward the USB drive. Where did you get this? From someone who died making sure it reached the right people. That's not an answer. It's the only answer you're getting, Faith said calmly. You can verify everything on that drive. I'm not asking you to trust me. I'm asking you to trust your own investigation skills. But you need to move fast. There are 11 other people connected to this network, and if you don't expose Wright first, they'll bury the whole thing. Rachel picked up the USB drive, turning it over in her fingers. Why me? Why not go to the FBI? The federal prosecutors? Because some of those federal prosecutors are on that drive too. Because the FBI has been investigating Kim Jae-ho's organization for 3 years and somehow never noticed the politicians and DAS working with the actual traffickers. Because you're one of the only journalists in this city who can't be bought, threatened, or intimidated into silence. You've done your research. I learned from someone who believed in being thorough. Rachel stood, walking to the window that overlooked the newsroom. If this is real, If even half of what you're claiming is documented on this drive, Vernon Wright isn't just going down. He's taking chunks of the justice system with him. That kind of story creates enemies, dangerous enemies. Good, Faith said simply. They should be afraid. Rachel turned back, studying Faith with new intensity. Who are you, really? Does it matter? To the story? No. To my conscience about potentially putting a source in danger? Yes. Faith felt something warm flicker in her chest, unexpected solidarity from a stranger who owed her nothing. I'm someone who's tired of watching powerful men destroy lives without consequences, and I'm someone who's already in danger just by existing. This doesn't change that. It just means the danger finally has a purpose. Rachel was quiet for a long moment. Then she sat back down and opened her laptop. I'll need 48 hours to verify and corroborate. If this checks out, I'll run it. But I need you to understand something. The moment this publishes, your life changes. Even if your name isn't in the story, if Wright and his people figure out you're connected to this, they will come after you with everything they have. I'm counting on it, Faith said. The more they focus on me, the less they're paying attention to everything else falling apart. Rachel's lips curved into a grim smile. You're either incredibly brave or incredibly reckless. Maybe both. Or maybe I just finally have nothing left to lose. Everyone has something to lose. Rachel plugged the USB drive into her laptop, but I respect the commitment. Give me a way to contact you. Encrypted only. Signal app. They exchanged numbers, and Faith stood to leave. At the door, she paused. One more thing. At noon today, Wright is giving a press conference about his new trafficking task force. It would be a shame if someone asked him pointed questions about his offshore accounts during the Q&A. Rachel's eyes gleamed. That would indeed be a shame. Hypothetically, what kind of questions? Hypothetically? Ask him about the Cayman National Bank account ending in 7743. Ask him about the wire transfer of $2.3 million on March 15, 2024, the same day 15 Nigerian women were deported instead of being given asylum. Ask him why his financial disclosures don't match his lifestyle. You're giving me a preview. I'm giving you ammunition. Use it wisely. Faith walked out of the Los Angeles Times building, feeling lighter and heavier simultaneously. Phase 1 was in motion. Rachel would verify the files. Quan had assured her they were airtight, and the story would publish. But that was the slow burn. The press conference was the spark. She pulled out her phone and texted Quan. Package delivered. Moving to position 2. His response came immediately. Confirmed. Equipment ready. Remember, observe only. Do not engage. Faith smiled slightly. Quan was ex-military, trained to follow protocols and minimize risk. She appreciated his caution, but she'd already decided that observing wasn't enough. Kim had taught her something in those 3 years, even if he'd never said it aloud. Sometimes you had to be willing to burn everything down to build something better. And she was ready to strike the match. The federal building downtown was a monument to bureaucratic power, all glass and steel and American flags. Faith stood across the street at a coffee shop, watching through the window as reporters and camera crews gathered for Vernon Wright's press conference. She'd changed clothes in a department store bathroom, swapping the business casual for jeans and a vibrant African print top that made her stand out in a way her previous outfit hadn't. Different costume, different role. Now she wasn't invisible. Now she wanted to be seen and remembered. Her phone buzzed. Quan. I'm in position. 2 buildings east, 4th floor. I have visual on all entrances. Security is heavy but standard protocol. No indication they're expecting trouble. Faith. They won't know what hit them. At 11:58, Faith crossed the street and joined the crowd of reporters being funneled through security. She'd prepared for this. Fake press credentials courtesy of Quan's contacts, a recorder in her bag, and a persona she'd practiced in the mirror that morning. Eager junior reporter from a small online news outlet. The security guard barely glanced at her credentials before waving her through. The press conference room was filling quickly, reporters jockeying for position near the podium. Faith slipped into the 3rd row, center position, where she had a clear view and where Vernon Wright would see her when he scanned the crowd. At precisely noon, Wright emerged from a side door with 3 other men in suits. Federal prosecutors, according to the nameplates. He looked every inch the righteous crusader. Silver hair perfectly styled, American flag pin on his lapel, expression grave and determined. "Good afternoon," Wright began, his voice carrying that practiced politician's cadence. "Today marks a significant victory in our ongoing battle against human trafficking. The execution of Kim Jae-ho yesterday sends a clear message. No one is above the law, not criminal masterminds, not mafia bosses, not anyone who profits from human suffering." Faith's jaw clenched, but she kept her expression neutral. Around her, reporters scribbled notes, cameras rolled. "Building on this success, I'm announcing the formation of a special task force dedicated to dismantling the networks that Kim Jae-ho built. We will pursue every lead, arrest every conspirator, and ensure that the innocent women caught up in these operations are safely returned to their home countries." Returned, not rescued, not protected. Returned, like defective products sent back to the manufacturer. Wright continued for 10 more minutes, outlining the task force structure, praising law enforcement, promising justice. Faith waited, watching. When she knew Rachel Donovan was somewhere in this crowd, armed with the questions Faith had given her. "I'll now take a few questions," Wright said, gesturing to the reporters whose hands had shot up. The first 3 questions were softballs, journalists asking about resources, timelines, coordination with federal agencies. Wright answered smoothly, confidently. Then Rachel stood. Faith recognized her immediately. "Rachel Donovan, Los Angeles Times." "Mr. Wright, can you explain the Cayman National Bank account ending in 7743 registered under your name?" The room went quiet. Wright's smile didn't falter, but something flickered in his eyes. "I'm sorry, I don't know what you're referring to. I have no accounts in the Cayman Islands. Our investigation has uncovered financial records showing multiple wire transfers to this account. That's including a deposit of $2.3 million on March 15, 2024. That's the same day 15 Nigerian women were deported from Los Angeles following a trafficking arrest. Can you explain the correlation?" The other reporters were suddenly very alert, phones out, recording everything. Wright's expression hardened. "This is a serious accusation with no basis, in fact. I don't know where you're getting your information, Ms. Donovan, but I suggest you verify your sources before making libelous claims in a public forum." Faith's hand went up. She didn't wait to be called on. She stood, her voice carrying across the room. "If there's no basis in fact, why did your financial disclosure forms from the past 3 years omit the property in Malibu purchased through an LLC that traces back to those same offshore accounts?" Every camera swung toward her. Wright's eyes locked onto Faith, and she saw recognition dawn, not of who she was specifically, but of what she represented. Threat. "And you are." Wright's voice was ice. "Someone who believes in accountability," Faith said. "You're standing here claiming to fight human trafficking while documents show you've profited from it. Women are being deported instead of helped. Families are being destroyed, all while you collect millions and pose for photo ops. How do you sleep at night?" One of the federal prosecutors stepped forward. "Security, please escort this woman out. And she's clearly not credentialed press." "My credentials are valid," Faith said calmly, even as 2 security guards started moving toward her. "But I understand why you'd want to silence questions you can't answer." Rachel's voice cut through the growing chaos. "Mr. Wright, are you denying the existence of these financial records? Because the Los Angeles Times has copies, and we'll be publishing a full investigation tomorrow morning. Would you like to provide a statement for the record?" The room erupted. Reporters shouting questions, cameras flashing, Wright's team huddling around him while security tried to restore order. Faith let the guards escort her toward the exit, but she made eye contact with Wright one last time. She wanted him to see her, remember her, know that whoever was coming for him had a face. Outside the building, Faith walked calmly down the street, turned the corner, and broke into a run. Her heart pounded, adrenaline singing through her system. She'd done it. She'd looked Vernon Wright in the eye and called him out in front of dozens of witnesses and cameras. Her phone buzzed with a text from Quan. "You were supposed to observe. What part of 'do not engage' was unclear." Faith: "I improvised. He saw me. That's what we wanted." Quan: "No, that's what you wanted. Now he'll remember your face. Faith. Good. Let him remember. Let him know someone's coming for him who isn't afraid. She slipped into the back entrance of a shopping mall, winding through the crowds, changing her top in a bathroom stall, pulling her hair up under a baseball cap. Different costume again. Ghost mode. And by the time she reached the safe house, a furnished apartment in Carson that Quan had rented under a fake name, her phone was blowing up with news alerts. DA Vernon Wright confronted about offshore accounts at press conference. Human trafficking prosecutor faces financial scrutiny. Explosive allegations rock federal building event. Faith pulled up the video clips. There she was, standing in that conference room, her voice steady as she challenged one of the most powerful men in Los Angeles. In the comments section, people were already speculating about who she was. Some were calling her brave, others said she was reckless. A few were making racist remarks that she scrolled past without reading fully. Quan arrived 20 minutes later, his expression caught between impressed and furious. Yum, that was stupid and dangerous. That was necessary, Faith countered. Wright needed to know this isn't some anonymous leak he can bury. He needs to be afraid. Fear makes people sloppy. Quan set down his laptop and stared at her. You understand what you've done? By tomorrow morning, when Rachel's story publishes with full documentation, Wright and the other kingmakers will know someone has Kim's files. They'll activate every resource they have to find you. Then we'd better move fast. Faith pulled up the warehouse documents on her phone. Kim's plan called for the explosions to happen simultaneously with the media exposure, creates maximum chaos, prevents them from coordinating a response. We're ready for phase 2? Quan nodded slowly. The charges are already in place. Kim had people he trusted set them months ago. They're on remote detonators with a failsafe. If we don't trigger them within 72 hours of his death, they'll go off automatically. He built in redundancy in case he couldn't get the information out before they executed him. How long until the 72 hours? 14 hours. Faith checked the time. 3 p.m. Then we trigger them manually tonight, right after Rachel's story goes live online. The print edition won't hit stands until morning, but the digital version will publish around 10 p.m. We detonate at 10:15. The warehouses are spread across the city: Long Beach, Compton, Inglewood, and Riverside. 4 simultaneous explosions will overwhelm emergency response and create enough chaos that the kingmakers can't suppress the story. And the evidence inside the warehouses? Kim was clever. The explosions are designed to destroy their operational materials, drugs, weapons, trafficking logistics, while leaving the incriminating documents intact in fireproof safes that'll be exposed by the blasts. Fire department will find them when they respond. Can't cover up evidence that dozens of firefighters and cops have already seen. Quan pulled up a map on his laptop, marking the warehouse locations. We'll need to be nowhere near any of them when they blow. Kim's people might be watching to see who shows up. We'll be here watching the news coverage. Faith sat across from him. After tonight, there's no going back. The kingmakers will know this is war. This was always war, Quan said quietly. You just made it official. They spent the next few hours preparing. Quan showed Faith how to use the detonator codes. Yours explained the backup systems and ran through contingency plans if something went wrong. Faith absorbed it all with the same focused intensity she'd once applied to nursing school textbooks before she'd had to drop out for lack of money. At 9 p.m., they ordered food from a nearby Thai restaurant. Faith barely tasted it, her mind cycling through scenarios, possibilities, risks. She thought of Kim sitting in that execution chamber, calm even with death approaching. He'd spent months planning this, building redundancies, ensuring his final wish would succeed even if he didn't live to see it. At 9:45, Faith's phone buzzed with a text from Rachel. Story goes live in 10 minutes. I hope you're somewhere safe. This is going to detonate bigger than any warehouse. Faith showed the message to Quan. He smiled grimly. Appropriate metaphor. At 9:56, the Los Angeles Times website updated. The headline appeared at the top of the homepage. District Attorney Vernon Wright linked to offshore accounts, human trafficking cover-ups, exclusive investigation. Faith clicked through. Rachel had done thorough work. The article laid out everything. The financial records, the correlation between deposits and deportations, the meetings with known criminals, the pattern of cases that disappeared or resulted in victim punishment rather than perpetrator prosecution. But what made Faith's chest tighten was the sidebar. 15 women deported on March 15th, 2024. Rachel had tracked them down, or tried to. 3 were confirmed dead. 5 were missing. The remaining 7 had been found back in Nigeria, utterly traumatized and unwilling to speak to American investigators. These women came to the United States seeking safety, Rachel had written. Instead, they found a system that treated them as criminals while their abusers walked free, and the man who was supposed to protect them was profiting from their suffering. Faith's phone started buzzing with news alerts as other outlets picked up the story. Social media exploded. Within minutes, hashtag Vernon Wright was trending. At 10:12, Quan looked at her. Time. Faith pulled up the detonator interface on the laptop. 4 codes, 4 buttons. Kim had made it simple. She thought of the women in those files, thought of the 3 men who'd grabbed her in that alley, thought of Vernon Wright's smug face at that press conference. She pressed all 4 buttons simultaneously for 10 seconds. But nothing happened. Then her phone lit up with emergency alerts. Explosion reported in Long Beach Industrial District. Multiple fires in Compton. Emergency services responding. Inglewood warehouse complex ablaze. Riverside explosion. Casualties unknown. Quan turned on the TV. Every local news channel was interrupting regular programming with breaking news. Helicopter footage showed massive fires at all 4 locations. Emergency vehicles streaming toward them. Chaos spreading across the city. Faith watched, her expression calm. This was it, the point of no return. The vengeance chain had ignited, and now it would burn until everything Kim had built it to destroy was ash. Her phone rang. Unknown number. She answered anyway. Hello? Very impressive, Miss Lewis. The voice was male, older, with an accent she couldn't place. My name is Director Yang Sung-min. I run the Kingmaker operations on the West Coast, and I wanted to personally tell you how much I'm going to enjoy killing you. Faith's blood ran cold, but she kept her voice steady. You know my name? Of course. Did you really think you could walk into a federal press conference, challenge Vernon Wright publicly, and remain anonymous? We had facial recognition running on every person in that room. By the time you left the building, we knew who you were, where you lived, where you worked, and every speeding ticket you've ever received. Quan was already moving, pulling weapons from a hidden panel in the wall. He mouthed, Trace. Faith kept Yang talking. If you know where I am, why are you calling instead of sending people? Oh, people are coming, but I wanted to hear your voice first. He wanted to understand what kind of woman is foolish enough to declare war on us. Kim Jae-ho was a formidable enemy with an army behind him. You're a maid with delusions of grandeur. I'm the maid who just cost you 4 warehouses and Vernon Wright's credibility, Faith shot back. And this is only the beginning. Yang chuckled, a sound like grinding glass. Is it? Let me tell you what happens next. Wright will resign, certainly, but we'll replace him with someone more careful. The warehouses were insured. We'll collect and rebuild. The evidence you think you've exposed? It'll be dismissed as falsified by Kim Jae-ho's organization to create chaos after his death, and you'll be found dead in some unfortunate accident, forgotten within a week. Maybe, Faith said. Or maybe you're scared because you've never faced someone with nothing to lose and everything to gain. Kim kept you contained. Now he's gone, and you think you can expand freely. But he left behind something you didn't expect. Me. A maid. A weapon. And I'm already loaded. She hung up. Quan had the trace results. Scrambled signal, bounced through 7 countries, untraceable. But the call lasted long enough for them to ping your location. We need to move. Now. They grabbed their bags, already packed for this contingency, and were out of the apartment in 90 seconds. Quan led her to a parking garage 2 blocks away, where he'd stashed a nondescript Toyota under a tarp. As they drove away, Faith looked back at the building. How did they identify me so fast? Yang wasn't lying about facial recognition. The Kingmakers have law enforcement connections. They probably ran you through every database available. The question is why he warned you they were coming instead of just sending a hit squad. Faith thought about that. He's testing me, seeing how I react under pressure, trying to make me panic and make mistakes. Is it working? No. Faith pulled out her phone and checked the news. The warehouse fires were dominating coverage, with reporters already connecting them to the breaking scandal about Vernon Wright. It's making me angry. And angry is useful. Quan drove them to a motel in Pasadena, paying cash for a room registered under a fake name. Once inside, he set up a security perimeter, motion sensors on the door and windows, a camera covering the parking lot, a handgun within easy reach. Faith sat on the bed, was processing everything that had happened in the past 18 hours. She'd gone from invisible maid to public threat. She'd exposed corruption, destroyed assets, and put a target on her back that would never disappear. And she felt more alive than she had in years. "Tell me about the other kingmakers," she said to Quan. Yang mentioned he runs West Coast operations. Who runs everything else? Quan pulled up files on his laptop. The kingmakers are structured in cells, 12 total members, 4 cells of 3. West Coast cell is Yang Sung-min, Vernon Wright, and a woman named Patricia Navarro. She runs the actual trafficking logistics. East Coast cell is led by someone named Dmitry Volkov, but Kim's intelligence on them was limited. Midwest and South cells are even more shadowy. "Wright's burned," Faith said. Navarro. She's the operational genius. Colombian national, immigrated legally 20 years ago, built a legitimate shipping business that's actually a front for moving people and product. She's insulated, no direct connections to anything illegal on paper. But Kim had something on her. Audio recordings, Navarro discussing trafficking routes with Yang. It's on the USB drive, but Kim was waiting for the right moment to release it. Faith felt the pieces clicking into place. Wright's public exposure creates panic. Now we hit Navarro to destroy their operational capability. Without her logistics network, they can't move product or people. The whole system starts collapsing. And they'll retaliate hard. We're talking about billions of dollars in revenue. These people don't forgive threats to their income. Good. Faith's smile was sharp. Let them come. Every person they send after me is someone not protecting their operations. Every resource they spend hunting me is one they can't use to hurt anyone else. Quan studied her with something like respect. You've thought this through. I've had time to think. 3 years working for Kim, watching how he operated. He wasn't impulsive. Every move was calculated. Every risk was measured. He taught me that power isn't about being loud. It's about being smart, being patient, and knowing when to strike. He also taught you to survive. Don't forget that part. Faith nodded. How do we hit Navarro? Kim's plan was to release the audio recordings to her suppliers, the cartels providing the women. Make them think she's working with law enforcement. Trafficking organizations are paranoid about informants. If they believe Navarro is cooperating with the feds to save herself after Wright's exposure, they'll eliminate her themselves. How do we make them believe it? Quan pulled up an audio file. Kim had deepfake technology experts prepare a recording of Navarro talking to what sounds like federal agents. It's based on her real voice from the surveillance recordings, modified to sound like she's negotiating immunity in exchange for information. We leak this to the cartels through their communication channels, and they'll do the rest. Faith listened to the fake recording. It was convincing. Navarro's voice, her speech patterns, talking about shipping routes and protection arrangements. To anyone who didn't know it was fabricated, and it would sound like a confession. When do we send it? Tomorrow morning. Let tonight's chaos settle. Wright will be scrambling. The media will be going crazy. Law enforcement will be investigating the warehouse explosions. In that confusion, we slip this recording to 3 different cartel representatives. By tomorrow afternoon, Navarro will be a dead woman walking. And the third kingmaker in their cell? Yang? He's the hardest target. Former ROK military intelligence connected to both Korean and Chinese organized crime, protected by multiple security layers. Kim was building a case against him slowly. Financial crimes, money laundering, RICO charges. But it takes time to penetrate someone like Yang. Faith thought about the phone call. Yang's voice, confident and mocking. He'd underestimated her, calling her just a maid. That was a mistake she could exploit. Yang thinks I'm reactive, she said slowly. He called to make me panic, expecting me to run scared or lash out randomly. What if we do the opposite? What if we go quiet for a few days, let him think he's won, then hit him when he's relaxed? That's risky. Every day we wait is a day they're hunting you. And every day they hunt me is a day they're not looking at what else might be coming. Rights destroyed. Navarro's about to be destroyed. Yang will assume he needs to consolidate power, shore up defenses, maybe even leave the country. That's when he's vulnerable, when he's moving, when he's distracted. Kwan's expression shifted to something thoughtful. You're thinking like Kim now. Strategic patience. I'm thinking like someone who survived men trying to break me for 6 months, Faith corrected. I learned how to wait, how to watch, how to find the moment when the monster looks away, and that's when you strike. They worked through the night, refining the plan. Faith uploaded the fake Navarro recording to Kwan's encrypted server, and he sent it through dark web channels to known cartel contacts. By dawn, the audio was circulating in the networks that mattered. At 7 a.m., Faith woke to news that Vernon Wright had resigned as district attorney, effective immediately. His statement claimed the allegations against him were false, but that he was stepping down to avoid any appearance of impropriety while the investigation proceeds. Translation: he's running before the federal charges hit, Kwan said, showing her the statement. Faith checked social media. The response was savage. People who'd trusted Wright felt betrayed. Victims' advocacy groups were demanding full investigations. Even some of his political allies were distancing themselves. One down, Faith murmured. At noon, Kwan's contacts confirmed the Navarro recording had reached its targets. The response was exactly what Kim had predicted. Silence. Deadly, calculating silence that meant people were making decisions about whether Patricia Navarro was a threat that needed elimination. Faith spent the day resting and planning. She caught a few hours of sleep, ate food Kwan brought from a nearby restaurant, and studied Kim's files on Yang Sung-min. The man was careful, paranoid even. He never stayed in one location more than 2 nights. He traveled with armed security. And he used encrypted communications and burner phones. But everyone had weaknesses. Faith just needed to find Yang's. At 6 p.m., news broke that Patricia Navarro had been found dead in her Malibu home, apparent suicide by gunshot. Faith watched the coverage with grim satisfaction. The on-scene reporters noted signs of forced entry that police were investigating. Translation: the cartels had made their move, and they'd made it look like Navarro couldn't live with the guilt of her betrayal. 2 down, Kwan said quietly. Faith felt no satisfaction, only cold determination. How long before Yang realizes the pattern? He probably already has. Wright exposed, Navarro dead, both within 24 hours of each other. He knows someone is systematically dismantling their cell. Will he run? No. Men like Yang don't run. They retaliate. As if summoned by the conversation, Faith's phone rang again. Unknown number. She answered on speaker. Congratulations, Miss Lewis. Yang's voice was cold now, the mocking tone gone. You've proven you're more than a maid. You're a legitimate threat. So let me upgrade my response accordingly. Is this the part where you threaten my family? Faith asked. Because I should warn you, I don't have any. Foster care, remember? No parents, no siblings, no convenient hostages for you to grab. No, but you do have friends. Former co-workers from that cleaning agency. Neighbors from your apartment building before you moved to Kim's penthouse. A cousin in Atlanta named Denise who you text with twice a month. Faith's stomach dropped, but she forced her voice to stay level. Touching any of them would be a mistake. Would it? Or would it teach you that actions have consequences? You've killed 2 of my colleagues. I think a few dead civilians would be an appropriate response. You kill innocent people, and I'll send every file Kim had on you to every law enforcement agency in the country. Federal, state, local, everyone. I'll give them your location, your movements, your bank accounts, everything. You'll spend the rest of your life in Supermax solitary. Empty threat. You've already shown your hand. I know what files you have. Do you? Faith let that hang. Kim had multiple copies, Yang. Dead man switches, encrypted servers, contacts I haven't even activated yet. You think the USB drive was everything? That was just phase 1. Touch anyone I care about, and I'll show you what Kim really prepared for people like you. Silence on the other end. Faith could hear Yang breathing, calculating. You're bluffing. Try me. Kill Denise. Kill my old neighbors. See what happens. But know this, whatever you do to them, I'll do 10 times worse to everything you've built. And I won't be quick about it. I'll take my time. I'll dismantle your organization piece by piece, person by person, dollar by dollar, until there's nothing left but you sitting in an empty room, wondering how a maid destroyed your empire. More silence. Then Yang laughed. A real one this time, surprised and almost respectful. Kim chose well. You have his ruthlessness. No, I have my own. Kim taught me how to use it. Then let's make this interesting. You want to destroy me? Try. I'm not running, I'm not hiding. I'm right here, and I'm coming for you. Let's see who breaks first. The line went dead. Quan stared at her. Was that smart or insane? Both. Faith's hands were shaking slightly, adrenaline flooding her system. But I meant it. We have to protect those people. Already on it. Quan was typing rapidly. I'm sending warnings to everyone you mentioned, telling them to vary their routines, be aware of their surroundings, report anything suspicious, and I'm activating some of Kim's old network, people who owe him favors. They'll provide discreet protection. Will it be enough? Against a direct hit squad? No. But Yang won't use those. Too visible, too risky with law enforcement already circling after Wright's exposure. He'll use accidents, apparent robberies, things that don't draw attention, and those we can defend against if people are careful. Faith nodded, trying to process everything. In 48 hours, she'd gone from grieving Kim's execution to destroying 2 kingmakers and declaring war on a third. The vengeance chain was burning exactly as planned, but the cost was higher than she'd anticipated. Real people in danger, real consequences spreading beyond just the targets. Tell me I'm doing the right thing, she said quietly. Quan looked at her directly. You're doing the necessary thing. That's not always the same as the right thing. But Kim believed the world would be better with the kingmakers destroyed, and he gave his life to make it happen. You're finishing what he started. Whether it's right or wrong is above my pay grade. But you're helping me anyway. I owed Kim my life 3 times. This is me paying that debt. And, he paused, I've seen what the kingmakers do, the women they've trafficked, the families they've destroyed. If you can actually stop them, even partially, that's worth the cost. Faith pulled up Kim's files again, studying the information on the other kingmaker cells. East Coast, Midwest, South. 9 more targets after Yang. The chain could keep burning for months, maybe years. One step at a time, Quan said, reading her thoughts. Focus on Yang. Take down the West Coast cell completely and the others will panic, might even turn on each other. Kim's plan was always about creating chaos, right? Making them destroy themselves as much as we destroy them. Exactly. And it's working. Wright's resignation and Navarro's death will ripple through the organization. People will start questioning their security, their partners, their own safety. Paranoia is a weapon, and you've just deployed it. They spent the evening monitoring news and communications channels. The story was exploding nationally now, not just locally. Federal investigators were announcing probes into Wright's finances. The warehouse explosions were being connected to Kim's organization, with speculation about whether he'd set up a revenge scheme before his execution, which was perfect. Let them think it was all Kim's doing. Let them underestimate Faith's role. At 11 p.m., Quan's phone buzzed with an alert. He checked it, and his expression darkened. We have a problem. What? Police just found a body in Koreatown. Female, early 20s, Korean American. Shot execution style. Faith's chest tightened. Who? Her name was Hana Ri. She worked as a server at Seoul Garden Restaurant, where we met the first night. The room seemed to tilt. Yang sending a message. He's telling you he can touch anyone around you. The restaurant staff saw you there. Now one of them is dead. Faith felt rage and guilt warring in her chest. An innocent woman dead because Faith had chosen that location for a meeting. We need to protect the others. Already working on it. But Faith, you need to understand, this is how Yang operates. He'll keep killing people tangentially connected to you until you make a mistake or until he breaks you. Then we end this faster. Faith stood, pacing the small motel room. No more waiting, no more strategic patience. Yang wants to come for me? Let him. But we set the terms. What are you thinking? I'm thinking it's time to use Kim's final weapon. Kwan's eyes widened. The dead man protocol? Faith nodded. Kim set it up as a last resort, right? If everything else failed, if he was killed before he could take down the Kingmakers, the protocol would activate automatically. But we can trigger it manually. That's not a surgical strike, Faith. That's nuclear. It releases everything to everyone, every file, every recording, every piece of evidence on all 12 Kingmakers simultaneously. It'll cause chaos on a scale we can't control. Good. Chaos is the point. Yang thinks he can intimidate me by killing innocents. I'll show him what real intimidation looks like. I'll expose his entire network, every criminal connection, every dirty secret, and let the world tear him apart. And the other cells? The Kingmakers you haven't even researched yet? You'll be making enemies of all of them at once. They're already my enemies. They just don't know it yet. Faith pulled up the Dead Man Protocol file on her laptop. How do we activate it? Kwan hesitated, then showed her the sequence. It's a 3-key system. You need codes from 3 different sources to prevent accidental activation. I have one. Kim gave it to me before his arrest. You need to find the other 2. Where? One is in Kim's penthouse, hidden somewhere only someone who knew him well would find. The other is with someone he trusted absolutely, his lawyer. Faith thought about the penthouse. She'd cleaned every inch of it for 3 years. If Kim had hidden something there, she'd have seen it. Unless, his books, the Korean poetry collection in his office. He was always reading from it, but he never let me touch those books. Then that's where you look. But the penthouse is definitely under surveillance now. Going back there is suicide. Not if we create a distraction big enough to pull their attention elsewhere. Faith was already planning. Tomorrow morning, we leak preliminary information about the East Coast Kingmakers to media outlets. Nothing concrete enough to activate the Dead Man Protocol, just enough to make them panic and divert resources to protecting themselves. While Yang's people are scrambling to deal with East Coast exposure, I slip into the penthouse and get the second code, and the lawyer. We approach him directly. Kim trusted him, which means he's probably clean. Maybe he'll help voluntarily. Kwan shook his head, but he was smiling slightly. You're as crazy as Kim was. I'll take that as a compliment. They worked through the night again, preparing the East Coast information leak, mapping entry routes to Kim's penthouse, researching the lawyer, a man named Thomas Brennan, who'd represented Kim throughout his trial and had filed every appeal possible to stop the execution. By dawn, Phase 3 was ready to launch, and Faith was ready to finish what Kim Jae-ho had started. The vengeance chain was about to reach critical mass. The coffee shop across from Kim's building felt surreal in its normalcy. Young professionals typing on laptops, students studying, baristas calling out orders. None of them had any idea that in the building visible through the window, a maid was about to walk into a trap to retrieve a code that could destroy a criminal empire. Faith wore a cleaning company uniform, not the one she'd worn for Kim, but close enough. Baseball cap hiding her face from cameras, bucket of supplies providing cover story. Just another cleaner entering a building full of expensive apartments. The East Coast information leak had gone out 2 hours ago. Kwan's monitoring showed immediate panic in those networks. Phone calls, encrypted messages, people scrambling. Yang's organization would be distracted, at least temporarily. I'm in position, Kwan's voice came through the earpiece Faith wore, disguised as a Bluetooth headset. 3 buildings east, same spot as before. I have visual on the lobby and exits. Security is lighter than expected. You were right about the distraction working. Faith crossed the street and entered the building. The lobby guard glanced at her uniform and waved her through without checking credentials. People saw what they expected to see. A black woman in a cleaning uniform was invisible here, just part of the background scenery. She took the elevator to the penthouse level. Her hands were steady as she unlocked Kim's door with the key she'd kept. He'd given it to her after the first year, trusting her with access when he traveled. The apartment was exactly as she'd left it 2 days ago, but it felt wrong now. Empty, haunted by the ghost of a man who died, believing his last wish would change everything. I'm inside, she whispered. Copy that. You have approximately 12 minutes before the patrol rotation brings someone past that floor. Faith moved quickly to Kim's office. The Korean poetry collection sat on the shelf exactly where it always had. 12 volumes, leather-bound, written entirely in Hangul, that Faith couldn't read but had learned to recognize by sight. She pulled each volume down, checking for hidden compartments, loose pages, anything unusual. Nothing in the first 5. The 6th volume fell open to a page marked with a thin strip of paper. On the paper, written in Kim's precise handwriting, for Faith, who sees clearly even when others are blind. Below it, a 12-digit code. Faith photographed it with her phone and was about to leave when she noticed something else. A letter, sealed in an envelope tucked behind the marked page. She pulled it out. Her name was written on the front in Korean characters she recognized from seeing Kim write it countless times. "Faith, you need to move." Kwan's voice was urgent. "2 men just entered the lobby, not building security. They're armed." Faith pocketed the letter and the code paper, replaced the books, and headed for the door. She was in the hallway when she heard the elevator chime. No time to use it herself. She ducked into the stairwell, taking the stairs down 2 at a time. "They're coming up to your floor," Kwan reported. "But there's a problem. 3 more men entered from the parking garage entrance. You're about to be boxed in." Faith's mind raced. 5 armed men, 1 her. The stairs would take her down into their path. The elevator was compromised. She needed another option. The service elevator. Kim had shown it to her once, explaining that it connected directly to the parking garage for maintenance and deliveries. It required a key, but Faith had seen where the building manager kept the spare. She ran to the management office on the floor below the penthouse, broke the glass on the emergency key box, and grabbed the service elevator key. Alarms started blaring immediately. "They know you're here," Kwan said. "All 5 are converging on your position." Faith jammed the key into the service elevator and punched the garage level button. The old elevator was slow, rattling as it descended. She could hear shouts above her, footsteps pounding. The elevator stopped. The doors opened to reveal the parking garage and one of Yang's men standing right in front of her, gun drawn. Faith reacted on instinct. She swung the bucket of cleaning supplies into his face, the chemicals splashing into his eyes. He screamed, stumbling back. She grabbed his gun arm, using leverage and his own momentum to flip him, a move from the self-defense classes she'd taken after Atlanta, practiced until it was muscle memory. He went down hard. Faith took his gun and ran. "East exit," Kwan directed. "There's a maintenance access that leads to the alley. Go now." She sprinted across the garage, hearing more footsteps behind her. Someone shouted in Korean. A gunshot cracked, the bullet sparking off a concrete pillar near her head. Faith fired back without looking, just enough to make them take cover. She hit the maintenance door and burst into a narrow alley filled with dumpsters and recycling bins. "Left, then right at the corner," Kwan said. "I'm bringing the car around." Faith ran, her heart hammering, lungs burning. Behind her, she heard the door slam open again. More gunfire, bullets whining past. She turned the corner and saw Kwan's Toyota screech to a stop 20 feet away. She dove into the passenger seat. Kwan accelerated before her door was even closed. "Did you get it?" "Got it." Faith was breathing hard, adrenaline making her hands shake. "And they definitely know I was there. Which means Yang knows you're still in LA and actively moving. He'll intensify the search." "Good. Let him waste resources." Faith pulled out the code paper and the letter. "We have the second key. Now we need the lawyer." Kwan drove them to Thomas Brennan's office in Century City, one of those glass tower law firms where powerful people paid powerful rates. They'd called ahead, and Brennan had agreed to meet despite the short notice, but probably curious about who would invoke Kim Jae-ho's name. The office was exactly what Faith expected. Expensive furniture, degrees from prestigious schools on the walls, that particular smell of money and power that expensive leather and wood polish created. Thomas Brennan was in his 60s, silver-haired and sharp-eyed. He gestured for Faith and Kwan to sit, then studied them both carefully. "When you called and mentioned Kim, I have to admit I was skeptical, but your description of the situation was specific. Specific enough that only someone who truly knew Kim would have those details. We worked for him," Faith said simply, "and he gave us something to finish before he died." "The Vengeance Protocol," Brennan said, surprising her. "He told me about it. Not the details, but the concept. And he said if he was killed before the Kingmakers were destroyed, someone would come asking me for the final key. And will you give it to us? Brennan pulled out a file from his desk drawer. Kim was my client for 15 years. In that time, I defended him against charges both legitimate and fabricated. I watched him build an organization based on clear rules and boundaries. He was a criminal, yes, but he had honor. The Kingmakers don't. They're parasites who've corrupted every system meant to protect people. He handed the file to Faith. I've been waiting for someone to finish what Kim started. The third key is in there, along with instructions he left for activating the Dead Man Protocol. He wanted me to tell you something, whoever you turned out to be. Faith opened the file. The third code was paper-clipped to a handwritten note from Kim. Brennan continued. He said, "The person who comes for the third key will be someone who understands that justice and law are not always the same thing. Someone who's been failed by systems that promised protection. Tell them they don't have to do this alone. Tell them I'm with them, even in death." Faith felt her throat tighten. She'd been operating on anger and determination for 2 days straight. This moment of connection to Kim, even through his lawyer, cracked something in her armor. "There's more," Brennan said quietly. "Kim set up a trust before his arrest. It contains funds, clean money, nothing traceable to criminal activity, designated for a beneficiary he named 3 weeks before his execution. The beneficiary is you, Miss Lewis." "What?" "I don't... $25 million. He said it was payment for 3 years of making his home feel human and investment in whatever you chose to do after he was gone. The trust activated upon his death. The money is yours. No conditions, no legal complications." Faith stared at him, unable to process. $25 million. More money than she could imagine. Enough to disappear anywhere in the world and live comfortably forever. Or enough to fund a war. Why didn't he tell me? Because he wanted you to choose freely. He didn't want gratitude or obligation to influence your decision. He wanted whoever finished his work to do it because they believed in it, not because they owed him. Quan spoke for the first time. "You've known about this for 3 weeks. You could have kept the money. Diaz claimed Kim was mentally unfit when he set up the trust, and no one would have questioned it." Brennan smiled slightly. "Kim trusted me because I don't steal from clients, even dead ones, and because I believe in what he was trying to do. The legal system I've worked in for 40 years is broken. I've watched prosecutors like Vernon Wright use their power to protect criminals while destroying the innocent. If Kim's final act can break that cycle, even partially, then I want to help." He stood and retrieved a laptop from his desk safe. The Dead Man Protocol is sophisticated. Once activated, it uploads every file Kim compiled over 15 years to multiple platforms simultaneously. WikiLeaks, media outlets, law enforcement agencies, social media. It's distributed in a way that makes suppression impossible. Within hours, every Kingmaker's secrets will be public knowledge. "And the consequences?" Faith asked. "Chaos, complete systemic chaos. Some Kingmakers will flee the country. Some will be arrested. Some will be killed by their own partners or the cartels they've betrayed. Innocent people connected to them might get caught in the crossfire. The criminal organizations they've worked with will scramble to protect themselves, which could mean violence. You need to be absolutely certain before you do this." Faith thought of Hannah Ree, the server from Soul Garden, shot execution style because she'd been in the wrong place. Thought of the 15 women deported on March 15th while Vernon Wright deposited $2.3 million. Thought of the 3 men in Atlanta who'd made her a victim and walked away laughing. "I'm certain," she said. Brennan nodded. "Then you'll need all 3 codes entered simultaneously. I'll input the third one from here. You and Mr. Kwan input the other 2 from wherever you choose to be when this launches. The system is designed with a 5-minute delay after activation. Time to change your mind if you have second thoughts." He handed Faith a second burner phone. "This is connected to the protocol network. When you're ready, call the number programmed into it. We'll conference in, enter our codes, and the countdown begins. After that, there's no stopping it." Faith took the phone, feeling its weight like a grenade. "What happens to you after this?" "I'll be investigated, certainly. Disbarred, possibly. But I'm 64 years old and wealthy enough to retire comfortably. I can handle the consequences." Brennan's expression softened. The question is, can you? Because once this activates, your life as Faith Lewis is over. You'll be famous, hunted, and scrutinized. The kingmakers who survive will want you dead. Law enforcement will want to question you. Media will want your story. You'll never be invisible again. I've been invisible my whole life, Faith said quietly. Maybe it's time people see me. They left Brennan's office with all 3 codes and a timeline. Quan insisted they move to a new location. The motel was compromised. Young's people were actively searching, and they needed somewhere secure for the final phase. He took them to a safe house in the valley, a nondescript house in a working-class neighborhood where no one asked questions. Once inside, Faith finally opened the letter Kim had left with the code. It was written in English, but Kim's handwriting neat and deliberate. Faith, if you're reading this, I'm dead, and you've chosen to finish what I started. I wish I could tell you this will be easy, that you'll be safe, that you'll come through unchanged. But I've never lied to you, and I won't start now. This path will cost you. It will take pieces of you that you won't get back. It will force you to become harder, colder, more like the monsters you're fighting. I know because it happened to me. I was not always the man you knew. I became what I needed to be to survive, and then to fight. But I also know you're stronger than I was. You survived things I cannot imagine, and came out with your humanity intact. You worked for a monster for 3 years, and never lost your kindness, your intelligence, your ability to see clearly. That's why I chose you for this. Not because you're ruthless, but because you're good, and only good people can destroy evil without becoming it. The money is yours regardless of what you do. Take it and live. Take it and fight. Take it and help others. Whatever you choose, know that you gave an old killer 3 years of peace in a life that had none. You made me remember that protection and power can be used for something other than accumulation and revenge. Thank you for seeing the human in the monster. If you activate the protocol, trust Quan. Trust Brennan. Don't trust anyone else. And remember, the goal isn't to become me. The goal is to make a world where people like you don't need protection from people like the kingmakers. With respect and gratitude, Kim Jae-ho Faith read it 3 times, her vision blurring. Yeah, she'd cried twice in the past 5 years, once when she finally escaped Atlanta, once when she'd gotten the job with Kim and realized she was finally, truly safe. Now, she let herself cry for a man who'd been more father figure than employer, more protector than criminal. A man who'd killed for her without her knowledge and died giving her the tools to burn his enemies. Quan sat quietly across from her, not speaking, just present. When she finally composed herself, he said, Kim told me once that you reminded him of his sister. She was killed by traffickers when he was 19. That's when he entered the criminal world, to hunt down the men responsible. He found them. And then he found the men they worked for. And then the men they worked for. It took him 30 years. But he dismantled that entire network. I never knew he had a sister. He didn't talk about her. But the night before his arrest, he told me her name was Ji-won. He said you had her fire, her refusal to be broken. He said if Ji-won had lived, she would have been like you. Smart, strong, uncompromising. Faith understood then. Kim's protection hadn't been about her specifically. It had been about saving someone he couldn't save before, about giving another strong woman the chance his sister never had. We activate the protocol tonight, she said. But first, I need to do something. She pulled out her personal phone, the one she'd been avoiding using, and called Denise in Atlanta. Her cousin answered on the 3rd ring. Faith? Girl, I've been trying to call you. Are you okay? There's some wild stuff on the news about Denise. Listen carefully. In the next 24 hours, my name is going to be everywhere. News, internet, everywhere. People are going to say things about me, and some of it will be true and some won't. I need you to know the truth from me first. She told her cousin everything. The kingmakers, Kim, the trafficking, the vengeance protocol. Denise listened without interrupting, which Faith loved about her. She never judged before hearing the whole story. When Faith finished, Denise was quiet for a moment. Then, you're burning them down? All of them? All of them. Good. After what those bastards did to you in Atlanta, watching you finally fight back, I'm proud of you, Faith. Scared for you, but proud. I need you to be safe. There are people protecting you, but stay alert. Change your routine. See, and if anything happens to me, don't talk like that. If anything happens to me, Thomas Brennan in Los Angeles has instructions. You'll be taken care of. I made sure of it. I don't want money. I want you alive. I know, but I need to do this. For me. For all the women who didn't get a chance to fight back. They talked for another 10 minutes, and when Faith hung up, she felt lighter. Whatever happened next, the people she cared about knew the truth. At 9 p.m., Faith, Quan, and Thomas Brennan, via phone, gathered around the laptop. The Deadman Protocol interface was simple. 3 code entry fields, 1 confirmation button, 1 cancellation button. Last chance to walk away, Quan said. Faith thought of Hana Ri, thought of the 15 deported women. But thought of every victim in Kim's files who'd suffered while the Kingmakers profited. Enter the codes, she said. They each input their 12-digit sequences. The interface beeped 3 times, confirming valid codes. A message appeared. All keys verified. Initiate protocol? Faith's finger hovered over the confirmation button. This was it. The point of no return. Once she pressed this, the vengeance chain would explode into an inferno that would consume everything in its path. She pressed confirm. Deadman Protocol activated. Upload begins in 5 minutes. The countdown started. 5 minutes to change her mind. 5 minutes before every secret Kim had collected, every crime he'd documented, every Kingmaker's worst nightmare went public. Faith watched the timer tick down. 4:47, 4:46, 4:45. Her phone rang. Yang Sung-min. Well, she answered. Hello, Director Yang. You activated it. His voice was tight with controlled fury. I have monitoring on Brennan's office network. I know what you just did. Then you know you have less than 5 minutes to run. Cancel it. Cancel it now and I'll let you live. I'll let everyone you care about live. I'll even leave the country. Disband the West Coast cell. You win. Just cancel the protocol. Faith glanced at the timer. 4:12. Why would I do that when I'm about to destroy all of you? Because you don't understand what you're unleashing. Young's composure cracked. Those files don't just expose the Kingmakers. They expose our partners, cartels, triads, Bratva. You'll be starting wars. People will die. Innocent people caught in the crossfire when our partners come hunting for who leaked their operations. You should have thought about that before you built your empire on suffering. I'm offering you a deal. 30 seconds before that upload starts, I'll have men outside Brennan's building, outside your location, everywhere. I'll burn it all down if you don't stop this. Faith looked at Quan, who nodded slightly. They'd expected this. Go ahead, Faith said. Burn everything. Because in 3 minutes and 40 seconds, the whole world will know exactly who you are and what you've done. You'll have every law enforcement agency on 3 continents hunting you. Your partners will assume you made a deal to save yourself. Your allies will turn on you. And I'll still be here, watching you fall. 3:15, 3:14, 3:13. You're insane. No, I'm done being afraid. There's a difference. Yang's voice dropped to something dark and personal. I will hunt you for the rest of your life. However long you run, wherever you hide, I will find you and I will make you beg for death. You're welcome to try, but you'll have to get in line behind every other Kingmaker whose life I'm about to ruin. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a revolution to watch. She hung up. 2:47, 2:46, 2:45. He meant that threat, Quan said. Even if the protocol destroys his organization, he'll spend whatever resources he has left coming after you. I know, but he'll be doing it from the shadows, on the run, hunted, and I'll be ready. Brennan's voice came through the speakerphone. Miss Lewis, I should inform you, my office building is being evacuated. A fire alarm was pulled. Yang's people are trying to stop this from my end. Can they? No. The upload is distributed. Even if they destroy my servers, the protocol will complete from the backup locations. They'd need to hit 6 different data centers simultaneously within the next 2 minutes to stop it. 158, 157, 156. Faith pulled up news websites on her phone, ready to watch the story break. Quan had his laptop monitoring dark web channels where the information would hit first. 115, 114, 113. Faith, Quan said quietly. Thank you for letting me be part of this. Kim would be proud. We're not done yet. This is just the beginning. 045, 044, 043. Her hands were steady. Her breathing was calm. She thought of the execution chamber, Kim sitting in that chair, telling her she could be monster or angel, a destroyer or savior. She'd chosen to be all of them. 015, 014, 013. The laptop screen flashed, uploading to primary targets. 05004, 003, 002, 001. Upload complete. Dead man protocol executed. For 5 seconds, nothing happened. Then Kwan's laptop exploded with activity. Files are live on WikiLeaks. Mirror sites activating. Torrent seeding. Holy, it's everywhere. Twitter, Reddit, news sites are picking it up. It's viral. Faith's phone started buzzing with news alerts. Massive data leak exposes human trafficking network. 12 powerful figures named in organized crime conspiracy. Kingmakers, inside the secret organization running West Coast crime. She clicked through to a major news site. They'd already posted a summary. In a massive data dump reminiscent of the Panama Papers, thousands of documents have been released exposing a criminal network called the Kingmakers, operating across the United States. The files include financial records, communications, photographs, and video evidence linking politicians, law enforcement officials, judges, and business leaders to human trafficking, drug distribution, money laundering, and political corruption. The article listed names: Yang Sung-min, Patricia Navarro, noted as recently deceased under suspicious circumstances, Vernon Wright, noted as resigned DA under investigation, and 9 others, Kingmakers Faith had never heard of but who were about to have their lives destroyed. Kwan pulled up the dark web monitoring. The cartels are going crazy. They're seeing their operations exposed, their partnerships revealed, and some are already issuing kill orders on the Kingmakers. And Yang? Last ping on his phone was 20 minutes ago, Koreatown. He's running. Faith stood and walked to the window, looking out at the ordinary neighborhood with its ordinary people going about their ordinary lives, completely unaware that the criminal underworld was currently tearing itself apart. Her phone rang again. Rachel Donovan from the LA Times. Faith, I don't know if that's even your real name, but I'm assuming you're behind this. This is the biggest story of the decade. I need a statement. I need to know who you are, why you did this, what you want people to know. Faith considered. Kim had wanted to stay in the shadows, but she wasn't Kim. My name is Faith Lewis. 3 years ago, I was a maid working for Kim Jae-ho. He protected me when men tried to hurt me. He gave me safety in a world that had only given me violence. When the system executed him for crimes he didn't commit while protecting the real criminals, he gave me the tools to expose the truth. This isn't about revenge. It's about justice for every person the Kingmakers have hurt, used, and destroyed. Rachel was typing frantically. Can I quote you on that? Quote every word and tell people this. The Kingmakers thought they were untouchable because they controlled the systems meant to stop them. They were wrong. They forgot that the people they stepped on, the people they made invisible, the people they dismissed as powerless, we remember, and we fight back. One more question. Are you afraid of retaliation? Faith smiled, though Rachel couldn't see it. I've been afraid my whole life. But I'm done with that. Let them come. She hung up and turned to Kwan. What's our next move? Our next move is survival. Yang will come after you with everything he has left. The other Kingmakers who haven't been arrested yet will want you dead. We need to disappear while the chaos plays out. No, Faith's voice was firm. Disappearing is what they expect. We stay visible. We keep pushing. There are 9 more Kingmakers still operating. The protocol exposed them, but exposure isn't enough. We need to make sure they actually face consequences. That's insane. You've accomplished what Kim wanted. You've started the collapse. Let law enforcement handle the rest. Law enforcement is compromised. You saw the files. Half the people who should be arresting Kingmakers are on their payroll. Gee, we can't trust the system to fix itself. Kwan looked at her like he was seeing her clearly for the first time. You're not planning to stop, are you? This isn't about finishing Kim's mission anymore. This is your mission now. Maybe it always was, Faith said. Kim gave me the match and showed me what to burn. But I'm the one who chose to light it, and I'm going to keep burning until every single one of them is ash. Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. You made your choice. Now live with the consequences. Below it, a photo. Faith's old apartment building in Atlanta. Recent photo taken within the last hour based on the timestamp. Yang was sending a message. I can reach anywhere. And Faith texted back, so can I. She forwarded the threat to Brennan with instructions to submit it to law enforcement and media as evidence of the witness intimidation. Then she posted it to her own social media. She'd created accounts in the past hour, building her public presence deliberately. Within minutes, the photo was circulating with commentary. Kingmaker Yang Sung-min threatens whistleblower Faith Lewis. The response was immediate and furious. People were outraged. Offers of protection poured in. Hashtags started trending. Hashtag protect Faith. Hashtag Kingmaker's fall. Hashtag justice for victims. You're turning yourself into a symbol, Kwan observed. I'm turning myself into a target they can't quietly eliminate. The more public I am, the harder it is for them to kill me without making themselves more hated. Or you're making yourself so public that they'll kill you anyway, just to send a message to anyone else who might try this. Then I'd better make sure I'm worth more alive than dead. Faith spent the next hour doing interviews via phone and video call. She told her story carefully. Not everything, but enough. The maid who worked for a criminal who turned out to be fighting worse criminals. The execution that was really a frame job. The dying wish that exposed corruption at the highest levels. She was careful not to glorify Kim or pretend he was a hero, but she made it clear that the system that executed him while protecting the Kingmakers was broken beyond repair. By midnight, her face was on every major news outlet. Faith Lewis, the maid who brought down the Kingmakers? Opinion pieces were already being written. Some called her brave. Some called her reckless. Some questioned her motives. She didn't care about the opinions. She cared about the response from victims. They started reaching out. Women who'd been trafficked, families who'd lost loved ones, people who'd tried to get help from prosecutors, and police who turned out to be Kingmaker associates. Each message was fuel for the fire burning in Faith's chest. This was bigger than Kim's vengeance now. This was about breaking a system that protected predators and punished victims. At 2 a.m., Kwan showed her the arrest reports coming in. 3 Kingmakers in custody already. 2 on the East Coast, 1 in the Midwest. Federal marshals were executing warrants on 4 more. Yang Sung-min was officially on the FBI's most wanted list. It's working, Kwan said. The protocol did what it was supposed to do. Faith nodded, but her mind was already on the next phase. The Kingmakers in custody would have expensive lawyers. They'd fight the charges. Some might walk on technicalities. She needed to ensure they stayed down. Over the next week, Faith became a public figure in a way she'd never imagined. She did interview after interview, always controlled, always focused on the victims rather than herself. She worked with Rachel Donovan to release additional information from Kim's files in strategic waves. Each new revelation timed to counter any attempt by Kingmakers to spin the narrative. Kwan taught her advanced security protocols. She learned how to detect surveillance, how to vary her patterns, and how to spot threats before they materialized. The $25 million from Kim's trust-funded professional protection, former military contractors who'd worked with Kwan, people who couldn't be bought, but Faith knew the real protection was visibility. As long as the public was watching, as long as her story mattered to people, killing her would create a martyr. Yang Sung-min went underground. Interpol issued a red notice. His assets were frozen, his properties seized. The criminal network he'd built was collapsing as partners turned on each other and law enforcement moved in. 2 weeks after the protocol activated, Faith stood in a Los Angeles courthouse watching Vernon Wright being arraigned on 73 counts of corruption, conspiracy, and human trafficking. His expensive lawyers argued for bail. The judge denied it, citing flight risk and the severity of charges. Wright looked across the courtroom and his eyes found Faith in the gallery. She held his gaze steadily, unblinking. This was the man who'd profited from deporting 15 women to their deaths. The man who'd posed as a crusader while enabling monsters. Now he was in an orange jumpsuit, facing life in prison. Faith felt no satisfaction, only grim determination. 1 down, 8 to go. That night, she returned to the safe house to find Quan watching news coverage with an unusual expression. "What is it?" she asked. He turned the laptop toward her. The headline read, "Kingmaker Dmitry Volkov found dead in Moscow, apparent suicide." Faith read the article. Volkov, the East Coast cell leader, had fled to Russia after the protocol activated. He'd apparently shot himself in his Moscow apartment. "That's not suicide," Faith said immediately. "No, that's the Bratva cleaning up loose ends. Volkov exposed their American operations. They sent a message. Good. Let them kill each other." Over the following month, the Kingmaker network continued to implode. 4 more were arrested. 2 fled the country to nations without extradition treaties. 1, a judge in Miami, turned state's evidence in exchange for immunity and provided testimony that implicated dozens of other corrupt officials. Yang Sung-min remained at large, but sightings put him in Southeast Asia, then South America, then Eastern Europe. He was running, burning through resources, no longer a director of anything but his own survival. Faith used Kim's money strategically. She funded legal aid for trafficking victims. She supported investigative journalists researching corruption. She created a foundation in Kim Jae-ho's sister's name, Ji-won Foundation for Survivor Empowerment, that provided resources for women escaping abuse. She also kept hunting, because while the original 12 kingmakers were falling, the protocol had exposed something worse. The network extended beyond those 12. There were associates, partners, enablers, people who'd profited from the system while maintaining plausible deniability. Faith wasn't satisfied with destroying the leadership. She wanted to burn the entire structure. 6 weeks after Kim's execution, Faith received an encrypted message from an unknown source. "You wanted to find Yang. I can tell you where he is, but it'll cost you." She traced the message origin. Seoul, South Korea. "It's a trap," Kwon said immediately when she showed him. "Probably. But what if it's not? What if someone in Yang's old network is willing to give him up? Why would they? Because Yang's a liability now. The Bratva killed Volkov for exposing them. The cartels killed their Kingmaker associates for the same reason. Yang knows too much about too many people. They want him dead before he makes a deal with prosecutors." Faith sent a response. "Name your price." The reply came within minutes. $1 million US. Clean transfer. "I give you Yang's location. You have 24 hours to act before he moves again." "We're not paying $1 million to someone who might be leading you into an ambush," Kwon argued. But Faith was already arranging the transfer. "If it's real, Yang's the last major target. If it's a trap, they'll try to kill me and I'll be ready. Either way, we end this." The informant provided coordinates, a villa outside Bangkok, Thailand. Faith and Kwon flew out within 12 hours, bringing additional security and enough firepower to handle whatever they found. The villa was exactly where the informant said it would be. Surveillance confirmed Yang was inside, though his security was minimal. Just 2 bodyguards, down from the usual 8. He was broken, defeated, isolated. Exactly what Faith had wanted. "We could notify Thai authorities," Kwon suggested. "Let them handle the arrest. And watch him lawyer his way out, claim political asylum, disappear again?" Faith shook her head. "No, I need him to face what he's done." They waited until 3 a.m., then moved. Faith's security team disabled Yang's guards with tranquilizers. No killing, just neutralization. Then Faith walked into the villa alone, gun in hand. Yang Sung-min sat in a chair by the window, looking out at the ocean. He didn't turn when Faith entered, didn't reach for a weapon. "I was wondering when you'd come," he said in English. "Took you longer than I expected. I wanted you to feel it first. The fear, the isolation, the knowledge that everything you built is gone." Yang turned finally, and Faith saw how much the past 6 weeks had aged him. Gray hair she didn't remember, lines around his eyes, a weariness that went bone deep. "You destroyed me," he said simply. "Congratulations. You proved a maid could bring down a king. You destroyed yourself. I just made sure people saw it. So what now? You shoot me? Make a citizen's arrest? Call your journalist friends to photograph the great Yang Sung-min in chains? Faith lowered her gun slightly. Now you answer for what you did. Every woman you trafficked, every life you destroyed, every family you broke. You're going to confess all of it on camera with enough detail that no lawyer can claim it was coerced. And then you're going to surrender to authorities and plead guilty. Yang laughed, bitter and broken. And if I refuse, then I release the files I held back, the ones showing where you sent the women who didn't sell well, the disposal sites, the bodies. Your partners in the cartels and triads will see proof that you kept evidence of their involvement. They'll hunt you down and make what I could do look merciful. The laughter died. You're bluffing. Like Kim's protocol released everything. Kim released everything he wanted public, but he kept insurance files, evidence too graphic or too damaging to make public without harming survivors. I have those files now, and I'll use them if you make me. Yang stared at her, calculating. Then something in him broke completely. What do you want me to say? The truth. All of it. Faith set up a camera and spent the next 3 hours recording Yang's confession. He detailed the Kingmaker network structure, named every associate, explained the trafficking routes, admitted to specific crimes. By the time he finished, Faith had enough to ensure prosecutions across multiple continents. Why? Yang asked when it was done. Why go this far? You could have stopped after the protocol. You'd won. Faith thought about the question. About Atlanta and the men who'd hurt her. About working 3 jobs and still barely surviving. About watching Kim die for crimes he didn't commit while the real criminals celebrated. Because winning isn't enough, she said finally. I needed to make sure this could never happen again. The Kingmakers existed because good people looked away, because systems protected power instead of justice, because victims were taught to accept suffering. I'm done accepting. I'm done looking away. And I'm making sure the next woman who faces what I faced has a world that fights for her instead of against her. Yang nodded slowly. You're going to change the world. No, I'm going to burn down the part of it that needed burning. What grows from the ashes, that's up to people who still have hope. I'm just making room for them. She called Thai authorities anonymously, gave them Yang's location, and left before they arrived. By the time she landed back in Los Angeles, news was breaking that Yang Sung-min had been arrested and was cooperating with international investigators. The final Kingmaker had fallen. 3 months after Kim Jae-ho's execution, Faith stood in front of 300 people at the Ji-won Foundation's first annual gala. The room was full of survivors, women who'd escaped trafficking, abuse, systems designed to crush them. Also present were journalists who'd helped expose the Kingmakers, lawyers who'd prosecuted them, law enforcement officers who'd broken from the corruption to do the right thing. Faith wore a vibrant African print dress that hugged her curves, her hair in intricate braids, her skin glowing under the ballroom lights. She looked nothing like the invisible maid she'd been 4 months ago. She looked like someone who'd walked through fire and chosen to become something new. 4 months ago, Faith began, her voice steady and clear. A man named Kim Jae-ho was executed for crimes he didn't commit. Before he died, he gave me a choice. Walk away and live quietly, or fight back and change everything. I chose to fight, and because I made that choice, 12 of the most powerful criminals in America are now in prison, facing justice for the first time in their lives. Applause rippled through the crowd. But this isn't about me. It's not even really about them. It's about the thousands of women whose names we'll never know. The ones who didn't survive. The ones who are still trapped. The ones who've been told they don't matter. That their suffering is just the cost of business in a world run by men who believe power gives them the right to destroy lives. Faith paused, letting her words settle. The Kingmakers are gone, but the systems that enabled them remain. Corrupt officials still exist. Trafficking networks still operate. Women still disappear while law enforcement looks the other way. So our work isn't finished. This foundation, this movement, this moment, it's not an ending. It's a beginning. She gestured to the screens behind her, which displayed photographs of the women deported on March 15th. These are the faces I think about every day. 15 women sent back to deaths because a district attorney valued money over human life. We couldn't save them, but we can honor them by making sure no one else suffers the same fate." The audience was silent now, hanging on every word. "So here's what comes next. The Jiwon Foundation will fund legal defense for trafficking survivors. We'll provide safe housing, job training, psychological support. We'll investigate cases where law enforcement fails to act. We'll expose corruption wherever we find it. And we will never, ever stop fighting for the women society treats as disposable." She pulled out a piece of paper, the letter Kim had written her. She'd read it so many times the creases were wearing thin. "Kim Jae-ho told me that only good people can destroy evil without becoming it. I don't know if I'm good, but I know I'm determined. And I know that every single person in this room has faced darkness and chosen to keep fighting. That's what makes us dangerous to people like the Kingmakers, not our weapons or our money or our connections. Our refusal to accept a world where power protects predators and punishes victims." Faith's voice grew stronger. "They thought I was just a maid. They thought I was invisible, powerless, irrelevant. They were wrong. And every person who's ever been underestimated, dismissed, or erased, you're not invisible. You're not powerless. You're the people they should fear most, because you know what it's like to survive them, and survival is the first step to resistance." The room erupted in applause. People stood, some crying, some cheering. Faith saw Rachel Donovan in the crowd, taking notes for yet another article. Saw Thomas Brennan, who'd been disbarred but didn't seem to care, smiling with genuine pride. Saw Kwan standing by the exit, ever watchful, ever protective. After the speech, Faith made her way through the crowd, shaking hands, listening to stories, making connections. Each person she met was a reminder of why she'd chosen this path. "Miss Lewis?" A young woman approached, barely 20, with the cautious eyes of someone who'd learned not to trust easily. "I was trafficked 2 years ago. I got away, but they said there was nothing they could do to the men who did it. Then the Kingmakers fell, and my trafficker was named in the files. He's in prison now because of what you did." Faith took the woman's hands. "What's your name?" "Jasmine." "Jasmine, you got away. That's all you. I just made sure the people who hurt you couldn't hurt anyone else. Your courage saved you. Don't forget that." Jasmine's eyes filled with tears. "I want to help, however I can. I want to be part of this." "Then you will be. We need people who understand, who've lived it. Come to our offices tomorrow and we'll talk about what that looks like." Similar conversations happened throughout the night. Survivors becoming advocates, victims becoming warriors, the invisible becoming impossible to ignore. At midnight, Faith stepped out onto the venue's balcony for air. The city spread before her, millions of lights hiding millions of stories. Somewhere in that city, a woman was being hurt right now. Somewhere, a crime was being committed that would go unpunished. But somewhere else, a survivor was finding the strength to leave. A journalist was investigating a corrupt official. A prosecutor was choosing to do the right thing despite pressure to stay quiet. The world was still broken. But it was less broken than it had been 4 months ago. "You did good tonight," Kwan said, stepping onto the balcony beside her. "It doesn't feel like enough. It never will. That's how you know you're doing it for the right reasons." He handed her a tablet. "But you should see this." Young's confession led to 3 more arrests today. Associates we didn't know about, and 2 senators just announced they're introducing legislation based on the Kingmaker exposure. Mandatory oversight for prosecutors, independent review boards for trafficking cases, protection for whistleblowers. Faith scrolled through the news. Change was happening. Real, systemic change. Not overnight, not perfectly, but happening. "Kim would be proud," Kwan said quietly. "Kim would tell me to stay alert because the people we exposed have friends, and those friends are angry." Also true, which is why I hired 6 more security specialists, and we're relocating you to a new residence next week. You're too predictable right now." Faith smiled slightly. "You sound like my overprotective older brother." "Someone has to be. You're too busy playing revolutionary to worry about practical things like not getting assassinated." Her phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. Faith tensed automatically. Unknown numbers had meant threats often enough that it was her default reaction now. But this message was different. "My name is Teresa Gomez. I was trafficked by the Kingmakers in 2022. I escaped, but they killed my sister when she tried to help me. I saw your speech tonight online. I have information about trafficking operations in Texas that are still running. Can we talk? Faith showed Quan the message. He scanned it, then ran the number through his security protocols. Checks out. Phone registered to a Teresa Gomez in Houston. No red flags. Set up a secure call for tomorrow, Faith said, and start building a file on Texas operations. If the Kingmakers had networks there, we need to know who's running them now. Quan gave her a look. You're not planning to slow down, are you? Would you, if you were me? No, but I'm a trained operative with 20 years of experience. You're a 26-year-old woman who was cleaning houses 6 months ago. And now I'm the woman who brought down the Kingmakers. People are watching, Quan. Survivors are reaching out. If I slow down, if I stop pushing, the momentum dies and everything snaps back to how it was. Or you burn out trying to fight every battle and someone takes advantage of your exhaustion. Faith turned to face him fully. You know what the worst part of those 6 months in Atlanta was? It wasn't the pain. It wasn't even the fear. It was the helplessness, the knowledge that no one was coming to save me, that the system that was supposed to protect me was either broken or didn't care. I survived, but part of me died in that experience. She looked back at the city. This work, exposing the Kingmakers, building the foundation, helping survivors, it's bringing that part of me back to life. I can't stop, not because I'm addicted to the fight, but because I finally found something worth fighting for. Quan was quiet for a moment. Then, okay, but we do it smart. We build teams. We delegate. We don't make you the single point of failure. Because Faith, whether you like it or not, you've become a symbol. And symbols are powerful, but they're also fragile. One mistake, one scandal, one moment of weakness that gets exploited, and everything you've built could collapse. Then I won't make mistakes. That's not realistic. Then I'll make sure my mistakes don't destroy what we're building. I'll surround myself with people smarter than me, more experienced than me, people who can catch my blind spots. Like me. Quan's tone was dry but affectionate. Exactly like you. You've kept me alive this long. I'm hoping you'll keep doing it. I made a promise to Kim. I'll keep you alive or die trying. But Faith, you need to promise me something in return. What? Don't lose yourself in this. Don't become so focused on destroying evil that you forget how to live. Kim spent 30 years hunting the people who killed his sister. He was successful. He built power, took down criminals, protected people. But he also spent those 30 years alone, isolated, turning himself into something he hated in order to fight things he hated more. Don't let that be your story. Faith felt the weight of those words. She thought about the past 4 months, the constant movement, the endless planning, the way she fell asleep thinking about Kingmakers and woke up strategizing next moves. When was the last time she'd done something just because she wanted to? Watched a movie, read a book, spent time with friends who weren't part of the mission? I'll try, she said finally, but I can't promise. Not yet. Maybe when this is truly over. It'll never be truly over. There will always be another criminal to expose, another corrupt official to investigate, another survivor who needs help. If you wait for over to live your life, you'll wait forever. Before Faith could respond, her phone rang again. This time, it was Rachel Donovan. Faith, I'm sorry to call so late, but I thought you'd want to know immediately. The Senate Judiciary Committee just announced they're opening an investigation into the entire federal prosecution system following the Kingmaker revelations. They're specifically examining how Vernon Wright was able to operate for so long without oversight. This is huge. Faith felt something fierce and bright ignite in her chest. How huge? Potentially system-changing huge. They're talking about mandatory reviews of prosecutor conduct, public databases of case outcomes, protections for defendants in corruption-related cases. If even half of this gets implemented, it could prevent future Kingmakers from using the legal system as a weapon. Send me everything you have. I want to testify if they'll let me. I already put in a request on your behalf. They're interested. The committee chair specifically mentioned you in her statement, said, brave whistleblowers like Faith Lewis make this kind of reform possible. After the call ended, Faith looked at Quan with something approaching triumph. You hear that? System changing, real reform. This is what Kim died for. This is what you're living for, Kwan corrected. Kim started it. You're finishing it. There's a difference. Faith's phone buzzed with a social media notification. Someone had posted a video from tonight's speech and it was going viral. She watched herself on screen, powerful and confident, nothing like the scared girl who'd fled Atlanta or even the invisible maid who'd cleaned Kim's penthouse. The comments were mixed, some supportive, some critical, some outright hostile, but the supportive ones outnumbered the rest. She's giving voice to people the system ignores. Finally, someone holding powerful people accountable. This is what real courage looks like. My sister was trafficked. Thank you, Faith Lewis, for fighting for people like her. Faith screenshotted that last comment and saved it. This was why. This right here. Over the next weeks, Faith testified before the Senate committee. She spoke calmly and precisely about how the kingmakers had corrupted the system, how Vernon Wright had used his position to enable trafficking, how Kim Jae-ho's execution had been a miscarriage of justice orchestrated by the very people he'd been fighting. The senators asked pointed questions. Some were hostile, clearly uncomfortable with a narrative that painted federal prosecutors as villains. But others listened with genuine concern, and when Faith finished her testimony, 3 senators personally thanked her for her courage. The resulting legislation wouldn't be perfect. Nothing in politics ever was, but it was progress. Real, measurable progress. Meanwhile, the foundation grew. Faith hired staff, survivors who wanted to help others, lawyers who'd grown disillusioned with the system, investigators who wanted to expose corruption. The Ji-won Foundation became a force, and Faith became its face. But Kwan's warnings echoed in her mind. Don't lose yourself. Don't become what you're fighting. 6 months after Kim's execution, Faith forced herself to take a week off. She flew to Atlanta, not to hide, but to face it. She visited the neighborhood where she'd been hurt, now seeing it through different eyes. She met with Denise and her family, played with Denise's children, laughed at stupid movies, did normal things that had nothing to do with kingmakers or foundations or vengeance. It was harder than she expected. Part of her mind kept drifting to cases, to strategies, to the work waiting back in Los Angeles. But another part of her, the part that Kwan was trying to protect, soaked up the normalcy like water in a desert. On her last night in Atlanta, Denise asked her the question Faith had been avoiding. Are you happy? Faith considered. Was she? She was purposeful, determined, successful by most measures, but happy. I'm satisfied, she said finally. I'm doing work that matters. I'm making a difference. That's enough. Is it though? Denise pressed. Because from where I'm sitting, you look exhausted. You look like you're running so hard, you forgot you're allowed to stop and breathe. If I stop, people get hurt. If you burn out, people get hurt worse because you won't be there at all. Denise took her hand. I'm proud of you, Faith. What you've done is incredible. But you're not required to save the whole world. You're allowed to just be a person sometimes. Faith thought about that on the flight back to Los Angeles, about being a person versus being a symbol, about the difference between living with purpose and living only for purpose. When she landed, Kwan picked her up from the airport. You look better, he observed, more rested. Denise made me sleep and eat actual meals. Apparently that's good for you. Revolutionary concept. He handed her a tablet. But I'm afraid the rest ends now. We have a situation. Faith took the tablet and saw news footage of protests outside a federal courthouse in Chicago. The headline read, Kingmaker associate released on technicality. Prosecutors blame tainted evidence. Her jaw clenched. Who? Marcus Delacroix. He was named in Kim's files as a Kingmaker associate who handled money laundering. Federal prosecutors in Chicago filed charges. But Delacroix's lawyers argued the evidence from the protocol dump was inadmissible because it was obtained illegally. The judge agreed. He walked 2 hours ago. Faith felt rage bubbling up, but she forced it down. Rage was useful fuel, but it was a terrible decision maker. What do we know about Delacroix? He's connected to the Midwest Kingmaker cell, not leadership level, but significant. If he walks, it sets precedent that could let other associates escape prosecution. Then we make sure he doesn't stay free. Faith was already thinking through options. The protocol evidence might be inadmissible, but that doesn't mean there isn't other evidence. We find it. We build a case the legal way, and we make sure Marcus Delacroix goes to prison. That could take months. Meanwhile, he's free to continue operations. Then we make those months very uncomfortable for him. We investigate him publicly. We connect him to every crime we can document. We make him so toxic that his own partners cut ties to protect themselves. Quan smiled grimly. And the relaxed, well-rested Faith who got off that plane? She'll be back. Eventually, after we finish this. But even as Faith said it, she heard Denise's voice in her head. You're not required to save the whole world. Maybe not, but she was going to try anyway, because that's what Kim had given her. Not just the tools for vengeance, but the example of someone who spent his life fighting for people who couldn't fight for themselves. He'd been a criminal, yes, a killer, a man who'd done terrible things. But he'd also been someone who saw a black woman being attacked in an alley and decided those men deserved to die for touching her. Someone who'd protected her for 3 years without asking for anything in return. Someone who'd given her not just safety, but dignity in a world that had tried to strip her of both. She owed it to him to finish the work. But more than that, she owed it to herself, to the scared 19-year-old in Atlanta who'd thought she'd never escape, to every woman in Kim's files who hadn't survived, to Hana Ree and the 15 deported women and all the invisible people the Kingmakers had destroyed. The vengeance chain had started with Kim's last wish, but it would end when Faith decided it ended. And she wasn't done yet, not even close. The end. What part of this story resonated with you the most? Drop a comment below and let me know if you're Team Faith for taking down the entire system or if you think she's going too far. Have you ever felt powerless in a situation where the people who should have protected you failed? Share your thoughts. If you enjoyed this story, please like this video and subscribe to Love and Tension for more intense emotional stories that'll keep you on the edge of your seat.